Hello, guys. Welcome back to Between the Ropes TV. Now, I'm blown sideways a bit by some bad news that we've just read, but more on that later. However, tonight we are looking at some great boxing. This is our full reaction to Artur Beterbiev and Anthony Yarde. Now, we'll get straight into this one. Ray, main event, just talk to me about it because, it's the first. Everyone involved in this channel, I know Yas is taking a bit of a break, but Yas was also right. We all sort of said rounds 8 or 9, didn't we? We were all very confident of that for Beterbiev, and that's how it happened. But I think it's fair to say the fight delivered much more than what we thought it probably would.
Yeah. First of all, obviously, good evening to everybody who's joined us in the chat. That fight, it was like I said it would be. In the preview, it could have been fought in a phone booth. It was a terrific back and forth fight. Anthony Yarde did better than I expected. I still, looking back at it now, it's still kind of gone the way I thought it would in terms of the way Artur Beterbiev would break him down, use his footwork to creep on, closing that distance, use lateral movement really well. What I was really impressed with was the way Artur Beterbiev, I should say, got himself out the corners when it looked as though Anthony Yarde was trapping him, unloading shots at him. In the last 30 to 40 seconds of every single round, Beterbiev spun him, unloaded him with heavy shots, effective shots that had an impact on Anthony Yarde, eye-catching shots, and they were making the rounds close. You were kind of thinking for 2.5 minutes, Anthony Yarde was doing his best to win the round, but the quality work was often coming in from Beterbiev in the latter 30, 40 seconds of the round. Anthony Yarde was really good, to be honest with you. I always criticise Anthony Yarde for slow feet, pot shotting behind the Philly shell and not throwing a lot of shots, not being busy enough. But he was the opposite. He was really busy. He was throwing a lot of shots. He was having he was using his feet to get out of range, lateral movement. On the flip side of that, it was exhausting him. And he's a really big frame, really muscular guy, kind of like an Anthony Joshua type of build. And I knew that he wasn't able to employ that style for very long and be effective, because there's very few boxers out there better at cutting the ring off than Artur Beterbiev. I kind of compared him to a Pete Golovkin the way he did that, and he didn't disappoint even at 30 years. People, I know you, Josh, brought up his age, but for me, when people say age is just a number, it is, because this guy is a really fit. He's a freak of nature at 38. Look at his physique. He's a freak of nature. So I just think, and don't get me wrong. I think Anthony Yarde can come again. And even though I was giving him criticism that he hadn't really had that, had those fights to build him up against someone who's skilled and is effective as Beterbiev, he definitely showed that he can mix it with the top guys, the top dons at 175. So it was an impressive performance, but an even better performance from Beterbiev.
No, 100%. Just on the age there, I know I was concerned about the age before the Joe Smith fight because I just thought it's going to catch him at some point. I'll be honest, I didn't for this fight purely because I thought he's just leagues above Anthony Yarde. I will, as you've just said, really, Ray, I'll echo it. Anthony Yarde showed he had a lot more than what I think any boxing fan probably gave him credit for being brutally honest. I noticed obviously different commentary outfits get slagged off for being biased, but BT for me are particularly bad. And even in the BT studio, they were trying to give Yarde every sort of chance, but they weren't actually committing on thinking that Yarde was going to win this fight, which I thought was quite telling. But he performed, he over-delivered on what we thought he would do. But for me, I just think, you've said there that Anthony Yarde can come again. How far do you mean? Because for me, there's big fights for him. I know Frank Warren said today that he wants to make the Joe Smith Jr. fight, and that's a logical fight, don't get me wrong. But I don't think he'll get to fight for a world title again. I just don't. Do you?
Yeah, of course he can. Why not? Why not? I mean, for me, yeah, we want to see the undisputed fight at 175. Let's just say, Beterbiev wins that. One of those guys, Beterbiev or Bivol, could decide to move up or could decide to move down. If it could free up an opportunity for him. I don't think. I mean, he's 31. I don't think he will be. I don't think it's beyond the realms of possibilities within the next 2 years. He fights for a world title. I think it's possible. I could think Frank Warren could do what he's been doing with him and put him in against sort of like lads from Eastern Europe and hover around and wait for another opportunity to come up at 175. I think it's possible. At the end of the day, I mean, I know you were saying about the BT and the scorecards and stuff, but I sense a lot that BT, the commentators on BT were thinking that had it gone the full 12 rounds, Anthony Yarde was in a shout of winning that. I mean, we've got to remember, Josh, at the point of stoppage, he was up on 2 of the 3 scorecards from the judges. I wasn't expecting him to start so fast, and I gave him the first 2 rounds quite comfortably. But then Beterbiev does what he does best. He got back into the fight. And what you got to remember is, with that pressure coming from Beterbiev, he wasn't always able to keep Beterbiev off. He didn't have the stamina to do it. I kept saying he probably didn't have the experience to do it. But he did show that potentially he can mix it at this level. I mean, you've got names there like Callum Smith, Joe Smith Jr. You've got people there coming up who can give him a good fight. Craig Richards. You've got Zurdo Ramirez. I think he beat Zurdo Ramirez, if I'm being honest with you. And that's more of a fact that I'm not a big fan of Zurdo Ramirez. So there's some massive fights out there at light heavyweight for him. So he's still got some sort of a future.
No, 100%. There are big fights for him. But for me, his next fight, let's not forget here. As you said, I agree with everything you said. He was ahead on 2 of the 3 scorecards, and he took it to Beterbiev. I mean, we'll just get to some comments, and then I'll sort of make my point. Obviously, Davey, pleasure to have you on. I never expected Yarde to take the fight to him. I was never a fan of Yarde. Definitely gain more respect for him now. Totally agree with that. He's made me laugh a little bit here. He has took 2 weeks off to pay his lucky bill. That'll be from the
yeah, times are hard, mate. You know that, bro.
Extra shifts to cover it, but there we go. And Beterbiev said himself he thinks Yarde can be world champion after the fight. He did, and I get where he's coming from with that. And also agree with this point you just fired in, Davey. The way Beterbiev slumped to his knee after the knockout just shows how glad he was to get him stopped. I totally agree, and I'm taking nothing away from Anthony Yarde. But I would say on this point, Beterbiev's going to big up Anthony Yarde because he's just giving him the fight of his life. I think it's also important to add context to this. Let's be real about it. He's 38. However you want to look at it, Beterbiev, he's 38. I don't think he's still an absolutely incredible fighter, but I don't think he was quite as crisp as what we've seen in the last 2 or 3 years, myself personally. I'm not saying it's as drastic as like we've said about the decline in Katie Taylor's skills, but for me, some of the shots that he was getting hit with, I don't know if he would. And if Anthony Yarde, in fairness, he had Beterbiev wobbled a few times. If he's, what I love is that last week, everybody was sort of slagging off Anthony Yarde, ourselves included, saying he's not had the right prep for this fight. He's not, fought the names. He's not really had that acid test other than the Kovalev fight. Now he's turned into a killer. Do you know what I mean? And I get why his stock has definitely risen in defeat. But I just think, realistically next, I'd pick him to beat Joe Smith Jr., but in a hell of a fight, personally. Buatsi's a 50-50. Who knows how that could go. Callum Smith, I'd pick to beat him. If he could blag a Bivol fight, I'd pick him to beat him. The only guy who's at the top of that 175 division, or towards the top of it, who I would definitely 100% back Anthony Yarde to win, is Zurdo Ramirez, as you've just said yourself, Ray. Everybody else, for me, I don't know if I'll be picking Yarde for it. And also, after such a grueling fight like that, how hungry is he going to be to actually come back? Because, he got stopped against Kovalev. He's got stopped there. And I will also say, just quickly before I hand it back to you, Ray, fair play to the corner. You know, Anthony Yarde's corner take a bit of a slag in, but I did respect what they did. You know, they saved the Lion from himself 100% because credit to Anthony Yarde, he was going to carry on in that fight. There's no doubt about it. And they've saved him. So, you know, we're quick enough to slag the corner off, but keep the same energy when they've done something good. For me, they did really well.
Yeah, and that's...
No, go on.
That's because Tunde's got a lot of love, a lot of respect, and he knows Anthony Yarde. So that's why he was... I've got to respect him. He jumped up, you know, and he did it out of sympathy. He also did it out of, you know, he knew he wanted to save his fighter for another day. But just to touch on a couple of points that you said there, you know, you talk about Beterbiev perhaps not being as crisp as what he was a couple of years ago. And my concern with that comment was, you know, you look at a couple of years, well, a few years ago now, when he was dropped heavily by Callum Johnson. And I think that's the difference between instinctive killers. So you can't really call Anthony Yarde that, because Callum Johnson, you know, he was a nasty piece of work in the ring. Callum Johnson, had you hurt, he would finish you. And that's the difference. He stepped up on the gas. And he couldn't finish Beterbiev because Beterbiev finished him. And that was the difference. And Anthony Yarde didn't do that. Anthony Yarde didn't wobble Beterbiev in any way, in the sense that Callum Johnson did. Callum Johnson properly hurt Beterbiev. And people talk about Beterbiev not having a chin. He proved there that he had a chin. He proved that. So I don't think he's getting... I don't think... Go on.
I was just going to say, Callum Johnson, though, in fairness to him, did that against a Beterbiev in his prime. Anthony Yarde's fighting the guy, what, 4 years on?
So that's the point I'm saying, you know, and I don't think that I don't think that Beterbiev's declined that much. I just think that, you know, those you know, at the very top level, Josh, you know yourself, you get very few opportunities, windows of opportunities to take out a top elite fighter. And Anthony Yarde was presented with some in the fight. He didn't capitalize on it. And I think that's the difference between getting him from being a very good fighter to being a great fighter. But when you're talking about having potential to win a world title and may not get opportunities, well, Callum Smith's will get an opportunity. So if Callum Smith can get one, I can't see why Anthony Yarde can't get one. Particularly, I mean, he's with Frank Warren. You know, regardless of what we think of him, he will still create opportunities for his fighters. So yeah, but definitely, you know, like you said, there's some fights there at 175. Perhaps, you know, you may think Anthony Yarde may not have a chance in, but Boatsy, for me, I'm you know what I'm like with Boatsy. I'm kind of thinking it's another matchroom hype job, because I'm not 100% convinced that Boatsy is as good as what people say he is. I'm not so confident he beats Yarde, if I'm honest with you.
But Boatsy's wins are better than Anthony Yarde's. We can't even argue that. Anthony Yarde doesn't even really have like the Bolotnik's win. He can't even rival that in terms of actual wins. He's got 2 world title shots, both with as much as we give him credit and slag him off for it, the WBO route where you can fight European journeymen and eventually you'll get a title shot. In fairness to Joshua Boatsy, and I've got some of the same question marks you have, but just like for like comparisons for me, Boatsy, the Bolotnik's wins, I'm not going to say impressive, because Bolotnik's is obviously, you know, he's got his level, but I don't think Anthony Yarde's got a win that can match that. But for me, the Craig Richards win is without doubt far superior to any win. I know you've got Lyndon Arthur, but we don't really know Lyndon Arthur's level yet. He was the Commonwealth champion. Obviously wasn't really supposed to be Anthony Yarde. We've been through that before on the channel. So this is my thing. You know, Boatsy Yarde is a genuine 50-50. And for me, it's the fight I actually want to see. Before you speak, Raud, sorry, I'll just give a couple of comments. Yeah, obviously, it's been answered, but Joel Phillip, if Hay could do it after losing to Cole Thompson, I reckon Yarde will get another chance.
Very good point. Very good point, Joel.
Well, it is. But also, as I was going to say, Davies beat me to it. But as much as I dislike David Hay, he was unified at cruiserweight, different level to Yarde, in my opinion. I personally agree with that. I think to say Anthony Yarde's like David Hay is...
I don't think he was saying. I think he was more on about, you know, if he could get that opportunity, rather than ability-wise.
He can no doubt get another mandatory position with the WBO, because that's what Frank Warren does time and time again.
Exactly.
But my point is, if the next fight is a Joe Smith, or it's someone of that top level, I don't know if he wins it. And let's be fair, another loss, if back-to-back losses, then you really are at the back of the queue. So Imran's here. Yarde impressed me. He's a tough fight for Smith or Buatsi. Good to have you on, Imran. Totally agree. Anthony Yarde impressed. I think he impressed the whole boxing world. And he is a tough fight. But I'd pick Callum Smith to beat him. And then as for Josh Buatsi, I've sort of just said it there. I think Buatsi has got better wins in the column. Ray, just quickly though, for Beterbiev next, obviously, Maurizio Suleiman said previously that he'll be ordered now to face Callum Smith. We want the undisputed fight. There's a lot of talk of September, Bivol moving down to 168 to face Canelo for the undisputed there. Just quickly, how do you see this next few weeks playing out? Next few fights playing out at 175?
Well, anything can happen, really. I mean, I'm disappointed Bivol's getting dropped down to super middleweight, and it's one of those things I believe when I actually see it confirmed. If there's going to be any rematches, it should be at 175. That for me tells you that Canelo is admitting defeat in that. He's never going to beat any of these top guys at 175.
But just quickly on that, Ray, can you see from Bivol's point of view why he would? Because for me, he's got the opportunity there. For me, if he can get guarantee off the governing bodies that he keeps his WBA belt at the minute at 175, can dip down to 168, potentially become undisputed there, he could come straight back from that and then have an undisputed fight early next year at 175. So, in the next 18 months, we could be talking about Bivol as a two-weight undisputed champion.
Nah. I think that's extra £7 is going to take too much. What you got to think of, it's such a risk. He loses. Yeah, he still keeps his WBA belt, but he's had to drag himself down to an extra £7, and that takes a lot out of a fighter. We're already not so many weeks after what we've seen playing with the weight do it to Chris Eubank Jr., what we've seen do to his coach, the great Roy Jones Jr. So you don't really want to be playing out around with the weight, and if you don't have to, you should stay at 175. That's his weight. Boxers deplete themselves enough without depleting themselves another £7. So for me, that two-weight world champion doesn't really do anything for him. Concentrate on beating Beterbiev and get the respect and legacy that way. But to quickly answer your question, I don't know, because if that undisputed fight is going to be made, I'm more than happy for Beterbiev to sit it out. But for Callum Smith, obviously, he's a very inactive fighter. He needs to be kept busy. So from his point of view, he'll be, thinking, I've seen what Anthony Yarde can do there. I can give Beterbiev a good fight. And that would be an interesting fight. But I would still expect Beterbiev and Bivol to be beating everybody else in the light heavyweight division, apart from each other. I think that they're each other's toughest opponents at the minute for me.
No, I think, everybody would definitely agree with you there. Joel Phillips back. I'll be annoyed if there isn't an undisputed clash this year, to be honest. I think it's the following year or two. You can argue Bivol has aged Beterbiev out, makes the clash less interesting. For me, that's bang on. In terms of that fight, there's already question marks about Beterbiev's age and skill set. It needs to happen 100%. But in all fairness to Callum Smith, he had a massive weight at super middleweight, didn't he, for that WBC? It felt like he had the diamond belt for forever. In every fight, it was you get your world title shot next, which we have seen. In fairness, the WBC almost do that to British fighters quite a bit, which annoys the hell out of me. But that's probably a different video. Imran, Bivol draining himself against Canelo is dangerous. There's no doubt about that, but I can see from Bivol's point of view, fighters sometimes need saving from themselves. And I can see from his point of view, hang on, 18 months' time, on potentially a two-weight undisputed world champion. That, shoots him to the top of any pound-for-pound list, it would have to. And then you're also talking about, legends of the sport. He's up there in the upper echelon. So I do get it. But, Ray, this sort of brings us to our WhatsApp group chat yesterday, wasn't it? Because it was a little bit lively, I think it's fair to say. The debate around Callum Smith and his general skill set. We have billed this as a bit of a light heavyweight debate. Tony Bellew, everyone will have seen the tweet saying he knocks Beterbiev out in 6 rounds. Personally, I think that's too far, very ambitious. I'd love to see it as a fan of Callum Smith. However, I think it's somewhat unrealistic. But I will say, I definitely think Callum Smith's got the potential to certainly cause Beterbiev problems and get the win in that fight. You know, there's a lot of talk. I love it. When he was fighting Castillo at his 175 debut, he was like, oh, no, this is quite a lot. This is a lively fight. He absolutely causes one of the scariest knockouts, certainly of 2021, but possibly ever, to be fair. And then Borderlick, it was a final eliminated with the WBC. So in all fairness, he's created two devastating stoppages. I'm just sat here thinking he's got to take it to the top level of 175, which is what me and you have spoken about. However, I definitely think he's got the potential to do that. And now I'm going to give it to you because I think you're going to shout me down. But go on.
Yeah, Callum Smith is somebody I rate highly. I do rate him highly. The problem he's got is he's got two very special, very gifted fighters in his weight class. And we talk about levels in boxing. I talk about it a lot. And I don't think he's at that level. He doesn't have their level of skill. He probably has just as much power as what Bivol has. He's nowhere near got as much power as what Beterbiev has. I'm yet to see what Callum Smith's chin's like. He took some shots off Canelo, but Canelo's mainly targeting his body, his arms. I think Callum Smith, his feet's going to be a problem. His head stays on the centre line and he doesn't really move his feet that well. And someone like Beterbiev, who people thought he was just a puncher, and I've always said he's not. He moves his feet very well. He's going to cause Callum Smith a lot of problems. Callum Smith's got the range to be absolute brilliant, to control that ring, have you on the end of the jab, throw the backhand, and then move out the way. But that latter bit isn't so effective. In my opinion, it's not going to be as effective as light heavyweight. So I think against a stationary target, he's going to look absolutely superb because he's just going to bang them out. But against somebody that can box and move, it's going to cause him all sorts of problems. We kind of saw that with a John Ryder fight, kind of saw that with a Canelo fight. And when you've got people as skilled in terms of footwork as Beterbiev and Bivol, I can't really be confident and say Callum Smith's going to come out the victor unless these two just stand in front of him and exchange shots. But even then, you've seen how good Bivol is at getting in and out of range.
No, I agree. I think the Bivol fight is a different proposition. But for me, Beterbiev, I do hear what you're saying. And obviously, I'm not doing Beterbiev down here at all. But I just think, people talk about Callum Smith's power. He's not known as a puncher. No, he's not. However, what we've seen of him at 175, for me, what we're actually seeing is a man who should have been at 175 for a very long time. And, when you saw him at his first weigh-in, obviously for the Castillo fight, I've got no idea how he was even getting down because he didn't look great at the weight and you could see he'd still cut to get to 175. So, but he's produced two devastating stoppages in that time. So we're now talking about a different level of power at a different weight. And, we talk about fighters taking power up with them. For me, is this more a situation where Callum Smith found his power now? That's the question for me. We've got a few comments though, Ray, before I give it you back. Beterbiev will break Smith down and hurt him bad. That's Imran. He's also said that he thinks Smith goes into survival mode. Obviously, we've both sort of already answered that. Davey's back. I'm a big fan of Callum as well. I've always had a soft spot for all the Smiths, but Callum's definitely the best fighter of them all, in my opinion. I totally agree with that, Davey. I think it probably be you. I really rate Liam, and I quite like this. I don't want to say Indian summer because he's not quite of that age, but he's finally starting to get the recognition and profile that he probably deserves.
The thing is, they're all good fighters. Stephen Smith, Swifty, was a good fighter as well. Paul was a great domestic fighter. He fought the best at the. I thought he was really unlucky when he went out and boxed Felix Sturm, I think, in Germany. He should have won that fight. He should have been given the decision, I should say. But I definitely agree with that comment there from Davey.
He's also. I'd asked him if he'd back Smith to beat Beterbiev. Yes, I would have. Don't know if it's heart over head, but I'd put my money on him for sure. I'm sort of in that boat, but when I think about it logically, I can still make a good case for Callum Smith. Joel's back. Callum's a good fighter. I can see him pushing Beterbiev, but Beterbiev's ability to trap his opponents into big knockouts concern me. That is the issue there when Ray's just talked about the footwork of Callum Smith. With those traps that Beterbiev is going to be laying, that is definitely a problem that Callum Smith would have to overcome. So, I mean, we're obviously split, as we are in the comments, as to how far Smith can go. So I suppose the next question then is, in terms of the battle in Britain, if you like, Anthony Yarde's stock's just gone up to an all-time high, fair to say. Buatsi, he's got a decent resume, but definitely needs to kick on. And, only fighting once last year is definitely not helping the guy. Lyndon Arthur's also around, to be fair to him. So, Ray, quickly, who's your top? Craig Richards as well. Sorry, I did forget him yet. But he has lost. Obviously, lost to Bivol, lost to Buatsi. Who is your top dog at 175 in Britain?
Callum Smith. I think for me, I'm saying what I'm saying because he's up against some really. I mean, people just need to look at the amateur records, Dmitry Bivol, Artur Beterbiev, and see what I'm on about in that, because that's the only reason why I'm putting those two above Callum Smith. Having said that, I still believe Callum Smith is arguably the next best light heavyweight in the world. So for me, I'm putting him as top. We've got to remember, in my opinion, down at super middleweight, he was the best. He was the best. He just stuck around at the weight too long. It's a different ball game if he fights Canelo at 175. He's got a real good chance of beating him. So for me, Callum Smith's number one. Number two is where it starts to get a bit tricky, Josh, because Buatsi, lots of really potential. He gets hit way too much, in my opinion. He doesn't like getting backed up. He's got a great. He's great offensively. He's got a great repertoire skill. But defensively, I really, really worry about him. Anthony Yarde, and if you're taking Saturday night's performance, he seems to have come on loads, leaps and bounds. But I really like Craig Richards as well. Everyone knows I like that style of boxing. I like outboxers. And he almost went, when I say toe for toe, he matched Bivol. Some of those rounds, he was giving as good as he got. He's got quick hands. He's in and out of range. He uses the ring really, really well. I wouldn't be surprised if he beats Yarde on points. So that's a bit that I'm struggling with. So for me, I'll probably put, and this is going to sound strange because of that style, I'll probably say because I think, you look at styles make fights. I think Yarde could beat Buatsi, but Buatsi's beating Richards. And Richards, in my opinion, would beat Yarde. So it's a real tricky one. I'll probably have to just say Buatsi. And then Richards, and then Yarde, but it depends because, like I said, styles make fights. I definitely think Yarde could beat Buatsi. Buatsi's obviously beating Richards, but Richards I can see beating Yarde on a points decision for sure. Definitely, if Lyndon Arthur I could see Richards doing it, and then I would see Lyndon Arthur would probably be at the bottom.
Fair enough. Good evening, Chris.
How are you? How about Josh?
Do you know what? We're going to make another little piece of Between the Ropes history. I'd agree with you. And for the same reasons, I think Callum Smith is probably head and shoulders number one, just based off what he's done in the sport and what we've seen of him so far at 175. I think then, you could actually make an argument for number two for Richards, Yarde and Buatsi, very similar to what you just said, Ray. But I would have to put Buatsi purely because he's got the Craig Richards win at number two. And then Richards 3, Yarde 4. But what I would have said is, for me, Yarde has gone from being a very distant fourth place to he's right in that mix, if you know what I mean. He's stock, I'm not doing Anthony Yarde down after what he's done this weekend in any way, shape or form. What he's done was brilliant, but that is how I see it. We've got some comments to catch up on. Imran said Callum Smith's the best of the brothers. However, I don't think he's lived up to his potential. You can see a few similarities with Joseph Parker. Thoughts on that one, Ray? Because for me, I'm going to be honest, I love a lot of what Imran says, but for me, that's a little bit harsh. Go on.
Harsh. Yeah, it's a bit harsh, mate. I just think that, you know, Joe Parker at no point was ever the best in his division. Callum Smith clearly was. And for whatever reason, the fights weren't made. And I think you can't blame Callum Smith because it's taken until now, until we've seen Caleb Plant and Benavidez, David Benavidez. And don't forget, these two guys haven't actually stepped in the ring yet. It's in a couple of months' time. So I can envisage a situation where Eddie Hearn's trying to make these unification fights at 68 and nobody wants any smoke with Callum Smith. So to say he's not lived up to his potential like Joe Parker, when Joe Parker was never really the best in his division, is very harsh. And I think, to be honest, as I've already said, it was more the weight than lack of potential. We're not talking about somebody like Demetrius Andrade here, you know. We're talking about somebody who actually proved he was the best in his division. But that's just my view.
No, I completely agree, mate. You've articulated that beautifully. Davey agrees with our top four, if you like, in Britain. Agree with this poll.
Flattering me now, Josh. You're flattering me.
Mate, you were due it. I'm quick enough to give you some stick. We're going to keep the energy. Chris is back. Mystic Welch said 8th round win for Beterbiev. I could watch that again, actually. Yarde, best performance for me. Beterbiev dodged a bullet, but the champions find a way for a big knockout. I think you're absolutely right there, Chris. Fine margins, one mistake and it's lights out. Beterbiev soberly punishes you. Totally agree. We're actually just saying that, and you know, it's all in this little community that we've started to build. I think most of us actually, I saw a lot of online 3rd, 4th, 5th round stoppage win predictions for Beterbiev. But obviously, there's a few of us who did go sort of rounds 8 and 9 in the latter rounds. So, pat on the back, Chris, no doubt, mate. We were also just talking, Chris, about our top 4 light heavyweights. So, definitely give us yours in the comments if you don't mind. It was a repeat of Rocky versus Drago, but Drago won. Definitely had similarities, and it was a quality fight. I think, you know, we're going to be talking at the end of this year about that as a fight of the year contender. I know it's very early in the year, but you know that fight's going to live up to the test of time for me, no doubt. A last point, Ray, just to bring us home on this one. So, you know, other than myself, who can make a legit case for Callum Smith crashing the party, Bivol Beterbiev, if we get that undisputed fight, and you know, let's even say if we get that fight next, who do you see winning and how? I'll let you go first.
Sorry, can you say that again, please? Just because.
Yeah, no, I was going to say Bivol Beterbiev. If we get that fight that we all want, assuming we get that fight next, who wins and how? I'll let you go first.
I was hoping he didn't ask me that. I'm kind of hoping for my phone to ring so I can dodge that question. It's a tricky one. It really is, because I think 2 years ago, people were looking at Beterbiev and thought, this guy is just a walk forward, hands high puncher. And you kind of think if Bivol just pops out that jab, stays on his bike, uses his feet to get out of range, he wins this. But what people are starting to see more and more of, and again, I kind of compare him to Golovkin in terms of the way he doesn't stalk his opponents. There's a difference, as you know, Josh, so well. There's a difference between stalking your opponent and just marching forward and cutting off the ring. That's a skill in itself. For me, it's just as effective as the jab. Beterbiev does that brilliantly. Not only does he that, he's so good at setting traps. He makes opponents think a punch is coming from one angle, or a particular punch is coming and a different punch comes. And what I really like is the way he gets himself out the corner. He throws an uppercut, the right hand, then you uppercut again. And when you're hit by Beterbiev, if you stay hit, you saw that with Anthony Yarde. He doesn't hit you clean and then you can move out the way. You're dazed and it's had an impact on you. So I find it a difficult fight to call, as you can tell. I would lean towards Bivol. That's my bias coming in, because I like that style. I like the way Bivol's so fast. He's so in and out of range. Plus as well, people look at Bivol's record and think, this guy can't punch because he's gone a distance in his last 6 or 7 fights. Bivol can punch. I'm telling you now. Look at the way he stopped Canelo in his tracks. He stopped him from coming forward. He hits hard enough to to command the respect of his opponents. So I'm going to go for Bivol, 12 rounds points, but I'm not putting any money on it. I'm too scared to.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, what a contradiction. We've got boxing historian chucking Ray's pre-fight breakdown to TKO round 8 for Beterbiev. And, you know, it just goes to show, we were similar on this. I did say round 8 or 9, but sometimes, Davey, I think we know boxing sometimes. Doesn't happen often, but we're due one. Imran's back, but Ray, when you say he proved himself, how did he when he didn't fight the other best guys? His best win was a washed-up George Groves. And then Davey has replied to that. Imran, he means proved himself number 1 in the division, which he did. Ring Magazine belt was given to the number 1 ranked when he won the Super Series. He took a reigning champion's belt. Yeah, I mean, Davey's done it for us, but I'd agree. I think he was number 1.
Davies took the words out of my mouth there, so I'll let Davey have that one. Brilliant.
100%. Chris is there. I want to see undisputed between Bivol and Beterbiev, but I wouldn't mind seeing a Callum Smith either. I do find myself agreeing with a lot of what Chris says, but I've got to be honest, that's where I am. I really want that undisputed fight, but if Callum Smith gets his shot, I can't argue with it. Joel Phillip, I have Bivol via a majority decision. I'm going to be honest, Ray's given his. I think
go
I'm
on,
the same.
Go on and get the drum roll out.
Mate, I don't want to keep agreeing with you, and I feel like I'm blowing smoke up your ass tonight, but I do agree. I think Bivol Beterbiev, I think Dimitri Bivol wins it. And I like the majority decision shout off Joel, actually. I think that's how that could go.
Yeah.
I think it could be one of those that, you know, we end up talking about a bit of a contentious decision, you know, and some people, you know, me and you clash, don't we, quite regularly, Ray, on I like a more come forward and aggressive style.
Just a bit.
I think that's why this works, mate. And then obviously you like the boxing style.
Yeah.
So I could see that being that sort of a fight where, or even one of those fights where you watch it 2 or 3 times and you end up scoring it differently every single time, to be totally fair.
And I was just going to touch on that. Sorry to interrupt there, Josh, but do you think it could be like Canelo Golovkin in terms of the first 2 fights where, you know, everyone kind of says Golovkin won the first one, the second one, people say, well, I thought Canelo won it. I thought it was, you know, definitely it could have been a draw. I still thought Golovkin won it for the second time. Do you think it could be like one of those?
100%. No, I think it could. Yeah, bang on for me. But that's what we want to see in boxing. We want to see fights that we're talking about in years to come, don't we? 100%. Phil, pleasure to have you on, mate. Hit that like button for us and subscribe if you haven't already. I'm pretty sure you have.
Nice one, Phil. Nice to have you.
I favour Bivol, but styles make fights, and I'm not sure if Bivol will be able to keep Beterbiev off, and how will he deal with the brutal power. That is the question mark. But, you know, as you've gone on to say yourself, very interesting fight. But you've got favouring Bivol at 60-40. Davey, pleasure to have had you on, mate. We're wrapping up now anyway, and we'll get Yas to drop you a link about that. In all seriousness, we're hoping Yas will be back with us fairly soon. He has got some quite serious circumstances going on in his personal life. So, you know, Yas, if you are watching this, as we've already said to you, mate, thoughts are with you, and we can't wait to have you back on, mate. Chris, I've gone Bivol on points as well. We've got a prediction out of Mystic Welch, and he did enjoy the boxing. Yeah, I think I know what he's on about. I suppose just quickly, Ray, to wrap up, the Jake Paul, Tommy Fury pantomime crap. There's no other word for it. What were your thoughts on it? Because I was really hoping that Derek Chisora, when he got in there with him, I was hoping we'd get to see that animal in Derek Chisora, and he just knocked both of them out, put an end to this absolute pantomime. That was last month.
Yeah.
But we didn't get it.
Yeah.
I mean, what did you think of that one, mate?
I mean, first things first, Derek Chisora would turn up at the opening of an envelope, to be fair. So I wasn't surprised to see him in the ring. And I was laughing quite hard when I saw Tommy Fury take his top off. I mean, you weren't going to fight there and then, mate. But it adds to it, doesn't it? But at the end of the day, I'll be honest with you, and this is me being a hypocrite, and I know I'm going to be a hypocrite, so be prepared to all slag me off. I've called this YouTube boxing or whatever it's called, yeah, but I'm more than likely going to watch this one. I am, because I've said for a while, I still think Jake Paul beats Tommy Fury. And for me, it's what impact that's going to have on boxing. Because Tommy Fury comes from fighting stock. He's Tyson Fury's half brother, if you like. So I just think it's going to be an interesting matchup. And yeah, it's a farce. You know, I mean, there didn't need to be that many security guards in the ring. Jake Paul didn't need to walk to the ring as though he was walking to an actual fight. But I'm still going to end up watching it. I've not watched any of these misfits or whatever they're called, whatever these things, but I'm going to watch this one. I am. I think Jake Paul's going to do it. So, yeah.
Do you know what, mate? I actually...
Josh, I can't like you, bro. I can't like you. Watch it.
Do you know what? I'd love to stick the boot into you here, man, but I can't. I think I'm going to watch it myself. You're going to watch it? Yeah. No, I think I'm going to watch it myself, honestly. Purely because some of the behind-the-scenes stuff that was across social media, I actually quite liked how Jake Paul handled it. You know, there's a bit when Tyson Fury interrupted his interview, and after Tyson, it was quite amicable, but after Tyson left, Jake Paul was like, I thought he was going to hit me then, like, for real. And, you know, I'm seeing a more likeable side to Jake Paul than I am to Tommy Fury, which I never thought I'd be saying. But Tommy Fury just mugged himself right off, taking his shirt off. And I will say with this, I believe this fight will happen when they're in the ring and when the first bell actually rings. And even then, I'll be waiting for if Jake Paul's got Tommy Fury in trouble at any point, I'll be waiting for John Fury to run up and take his own top off and try and start a fight with the referee and everybody in between, because the whole thing's a pantomime. And I get it. Yeah. You know, we're going over to Saudi Arabia. Everyone's going to make a few quid out of it. So I get the business side to it. But, yeah, I can't believe I'm going to say it, but it is the first YouTube boxing event that I definitely, I'm with you, Ray. I'm not happy about it, but I will be tuning in. You know, as predicted, we'll go back. Cedric Sports Train, pleasure to have you on, mate. Beterbiev has a psychological advantage from beating Bivol on the amateurs. Do you think there's any weight in that sort of thing, Ray?
Well, first of all, I'm delighted to hear from Cedric. So, hello, Cedric. How are you doing? Yeah, I do. I think that's a very valid point. I mean, Cedric himself knows the amateur sport inside out from working with amateurs over in Canada, and I think he's correct. I think. If you already look at Savannah Marshall and Clarissa Shields, and I think even though Savannah got that win against Clarissa Shields in the amateurs, I think the psychological advantage actually went to Clarissa Shields. So I do think amateur performances do have a psychological impact. In the professional ranks. Another good example is Katie Taylor versus Natasha Jonas. She beat her in that magnificent fight at the Olympics. I think it was 2012. It was the loudest event at the Olympics, and then she did a number on although controversially, in the pros. So I do think if you've already beaten somebody once, whether it's early in your career or in the amateurs, it is as a boxer they say it's 90% mental, isn't it? 10% physical. So I think you're going into the fight knowing you've already beaten the obstacle in front of you. So psychologically, that's going to give you a lift. And if you've lost to somebody, but you're in the mindset of thinking I can still overcome you, and you're the person that has shades of doubts, as Savannah Marshall did, it's also going to have an impact in the fight as well.
No, 100%, 100%. We just need to see that fight, don't we? I think it's one of those already, similar to Spence Crawford. It's been talked about that much that now it's sort of, we've said it all. It just needs to happen.
Oh, yeah. It's just got to happen, hasn't it? Yeah.
Exactly. Back on Jake Paul, Tommy Fury. Imran thinks it'll be cancelled again. Chris isn't a fan of it. These YouTubers are irrelevant, tree bush morons. They get views off putting toy cars in a bucket of water. I'm going to say, Chris, there, while you're not wrong, there's a chance Ray may agree with me. My little boy watches these Lightning McQueen people putting cars in water and changing colours. So it's not all bad, Chris. That's all I'll say. When you're trying to get these videos done, it does help sometimes to give the little boys YouTube. And Davey said, we'll be watching through a
I've got the same problem with my little daughter.
Yeah, there you go. It comes in handy at some point.
Keep that sauce quiet, Davey.
Yeah, I'll be. Yeah, I'm saying nothing. Joel there. I think it's Jake's only route to legitimacy. I can see it going through. Do you know what? I'm controversial. I actually make Jake Paul. I think, they're both novices. I know Tommy Fury's trying to talk about the fighting stock he's from, and I get that. But when you actually look at his professional resume, it's poor. I would argue it's worse than Jake Paul's, because although Jake Paul's not fought boxers, he has fought fighters. And they might be older and past it. However, he's fought genuine fighters, whereas Tommy Fury so far hasn't done that. So, that's my view on it. Chris, only credit I'll give these YouTubers is they're getting the numbers and money from it. Yeah, you can't argue with that. The new deal that they've signed with Misfits. Again, we're doing a separate video after we finish this about that announcement. But it's clear it is a draw. Imran, I've watched most YouTube boxing fights. It's funny to watch. It does have that side to it, Imran, but I've said on here before, my worry with it is that someone's going to get hurt when you're seeing these novices take shots flush in the temple and whatnot. That's when stuff goes wrong. People get hurt. And then if we're being honest about it, people, the media, Good Morning Britain, and, all these Piers Morgan types, they're not going to differentiate YouTube boxing. We saw it with Eubank and Nick Blackwell, didn't we? And, that was a genuine tragedy. But they're not going to differentiate and say YouTube boxing or crossover boxing, as they're trying to call it, there's a problem with that sport. That needs stopping. They're just going to say boxing needs stopping. So that's my issue with it, that when someone gets hurt, boxing's going to suffer as a side effect of it. So that's the bit that really annoys me. Tommy Fury's only relevant for chasing after club penguins on this date island nonsense. He possibly is, and his last name helps. And Imran said it's entertainment. It is entertainment, but whether they get introduced 16-ounce gloves or bigger, who knows? But for me, go and do the WWE. And I know people get hurt doing that, but at least there is an acknowledgement of WWE is scripted, whereas, boxing is real. If you get hit in a temple, you can get seriously hurt. There you go. Boxing is the only sport you can get these gimmicks. Well, I'd go back to go to the WWE, but fair enough, Imran. Right, guys, we'll wrap it up there. It's been a pleasure again. Ray, thanks for coming on. Thank you for everybody in the comments section. We've got plenty more content over the next few weeks planned, so stay tuned.